Here is a point Manchester City will not celebrate. Newcastle will, and so they should after a performance that recaptured the values so central to their identity. They would have won with a striker on the pitch, but for City, 6 days on from the relief and exultation of salvaging a 98th-minute draw at home to Arsenal, this will feel like 2 points lost. It has to, when Arsenal are showing how likely they are to push them all the way this season. On full-time, Pep Guardiola hugged Eddie Howe as tight as Newcastle's defenders had gripped his forward players all afternoon. Later, the Spaniard eulogized over his English counterpart. In reality, Guardiola will be cursing his opposite number, whose game plan brought a draw but with it a tactical victory. Consider, too, that Howe did not have Alexander Isak. Guardiola had Erling Haaland, but he did not score for the first time in the Premier League this season. He is too big to stick in a pocket, so centre-backs Fabian Schär and Dan Burn instead smothered the Norwegian with their black and white jerseys. Haaland was strangely isolated and, be it blind alleys or dark alleys he journeyed down, Schär and Burn were waiting at the bottom of the ladder. He emerged empty-handed every time. One criticism of Newcastle this season, accepted by Howe, is that their trademark patterns and partnerships have been missing, and the same could be said of City here. Dangerous? Always, evidenced by Josko Gvardiol's first-half goal that came against the run of play. But cohesive and in control? Far from it. Without Rodri and Kevin De Bruyne, they dropped points and standards. It was telling when, with the score at 1-1 in the 81st minute, Guardiola abandoned faith in the patience of his side's approach when sending on speed merchants Jeremy Doku and Savinho. The double change certainly quickened City's step. They'd had one shot on target to that point in the second half, but there weren't enough yards of the race left to run. Newcastle resisted and so they gained a point and made one at the same time. Last weekend's 3-1 defeat at Fulham was, even by the admission of Howe, among the worst of his near 3 years at the club. There were some home truths shared at the training ground this week and what followed was a performance of honesty, intensity and endeavor. Had Isak played, 1 point may have been 3. He was missing with a toe injury and while Deputy Anthony Gordon did win and convert a second-half penalty, there were spells when Newcastle were on top but failed to translate that into chances, let alone goals. But Howe had demanded a response and he got one. Not just for 5 minutes, either. Newcastle have a tendency to start well before unraveling or drifting, at least this season. Here, though, their energy and intent extended beyond the 10, 15 and 20-minute marks. When the aggression of their press forced Haaland to spoon one pass out of play and goalkeeper Ederson into using an audacious back heel to avoid a galloping Gordon, the home crowd were pantomime-like in their appreciation. The champions were rattled, but warning was served of City's ubiquitous threat when Haaland was denied a far post tap-in by Kieran Trippier, sliding and colliding with the upright as he nicked from the toe of the striker. Haaland cut his ankle in the process, but the insult was not the injury, more so that it would prove his only real chance of the game. Newcastle's period of superiority reached expiry when City took the lead in the 35th minute. Jack Grealish, for once, decided to throw caution to the wind and it certainly threw Trippier, who was caught flat-footed as his former England teammate danced by him on the left. Grealish found Gvardiol and the defender chopped clear of Burn before rolling into the bottom corner. It might have been 2 before the break. Nick Pope attempted to play out from the back. His pass was intercepted by Ilkay Gundogan but the midfielder's attempted chip. Pope was stranded, sailed harmlessly into the arms of the grateful keeper. The goal that drew Newcastle level arrived in the 58th minute. Bruno Guimaraes sprung Gordon clear after Kyle Walker played the forward onside and, when he skipped around Ederson, he was caught by the Brazilian. The contact was sufficient to send Gordon toppling, and he picked himself up to send Ederson the wrong way from 12 yards. The closest City came to nicking a win was in stoppage time when Pope kept out Bernardo Silva's volley, but to lose would have been cruel on the hosts. They embraced the point during a lap of honor at the end. But, for Howe, this was a day when the performance was arguably more important than the result. "We leave with our heads held high after giving a much better representation of ourselves," he said. "We need to find that consistently now." City, by contrast, were out of sorts and, unlike last weekend, out of luck. Given the threat of Arsenal, they are already at the stage when results perhaps matter more than performances.